The guy is a machine whose passion for cinema is matched by the actual tangible things he's done for the industry. And yet you're always hearing people complain about him, even if it's moaning about his movies. His recent ones were terrible, that acclaimed film is overrated. His Marvel complaints are an old man yelling at clouds, that kind of stuff. I think part of the reason why there's so many complaints about Scorsese is that he never really does the same thing twice. He's always changing it up. And what results is a filmmaker where we're unable to follow and gauge a pattern in his movies. It just goes from one thing to another, and we're never able to start one of his films comfortable, knowing to an extent what we're in for. Compare him to other authors. Tarantino, for example. You know with Quentin you're going to get a film set in a kind of Tarantino verse, where there'll be long drawn out dialogue scenes, cartoonish violence and snappy dialogue. That's Tarantino. We know why we watch and love his movies. David Fincher makes slow, methodical films which often follow cops in police procedurals or serial killers. In fact, Fincher is a great example because he's someone who did change it up and got a load of criticism for it. Mank threw a lot of people off. It was weird and different to what we're used to with Fincher. And then he made The Killer, which is like a parody of a Fincher movie, a deconstruction of the archetype hitman movie, which got a lot of criticisms from fans. Those criticisms he's opened himself up to would previously not exist and now do because his patterns have been changed up and disrupted. Fans are unsure because they're now in uncharted territory, and many are wishing, I just wish he goes back to making classic Fincher movies, and yet ironically pushing for him to try something new when he's been doing just that. With Scorsese, we're unable to get used to a style. He'll give us a bombastic, in-your-face thriller with Cape Fear, and then switch style to a sweeping operatic prose with The Age of Innocence. We compare each Scorsese movie to what we assume to be essentially the benchmark for what we perceive a Scorsese movie to be. But that quintessential Scorsese movie that we're constantly comparing each of his films to doesn't exist. Some might think back to Goodfellas or Casino, and are disappointed by, say, The Slower Irishman and other modern Scorsese movies. Like, why is The Irishman so slow? Why can't he do it like he did in Goodfellas? But between Goodfellas and The Irishman, you have all sorts of movies like Condemn and Cape Fear, and that's part of the issue. If I say I'm a fan of Scorsese movies, what does that even mean? Does that mean I like his wacky comedies like After Hours, or that I like his grittier gangster films? And Scorsese would have gained new fans in the 2000s making movies with Pretty Boy DiCaprio, The Departed winning Best Picture, and then he made a great thriller blockbuster in Shutter Island, then a children's movie which would have opened him up to even more new fans. Then he made his most popular and highest grossing movie ever in Wolf. I mean, think about it. If you're a middle-aged housewife who's been following Leonardo DiCaprio since Titanic, The Departed or Gangs of New York might not exactly be films for you. But Scorsese is like a charging snowball, getting all of these new fans attached to his films because of his variety. And then those same fans are the ones who complain about his films, because nothing new that he's making is like the film that they fell in love with. For a particular generation, The Wolf of Wall Street is the movie they know Scorsese for. You speak to a lot of people and they haven't actually seen Taxi Driver or Raging Bull or even Goodfellas. They don't know him as the director of those films. They just know him as the director of Wolf, and that's the benchmark by which subsequent Scorsese films are judged and ultimately compared to. Other older fans might know him for his quieter, introspective dramas like Taxi Driver, and maybe have become befuddled when Scorsese started making these loud, energetic movies in the 90s, like Goodfellas and Casino. When you think about it in that way, it becomes kind of hilarious. Because let's say your first Scorsese film, essentially Scorsese's debut, for you at least, is The Wolf of Wall Street. For a lot of people, that was their first Scorsese film. And then his next movie is wildly different. It's a quiet religious period movie, which, let's face it, most haven't even seen. And then it's The Irishman. Okay, yeah, maybe you know Scorsese made that famous gangster film Goodfellas. Didn't he make another one called Casino or Casino Royale or something? This new one should be good then. It should be a fast-paced crime film like Wolf of Wall Street was. But then, our poor hypothetical protagonist is blindsided that this movie is in fact a slow 3.5 hour film about an old man falling down in his hallway and reckoning with his morality. Wait, hold on, what happened to the guy who made the hilarious Wolf of Wall Street, which was bursting with colour and creativity? But the thing is, those who grew up with Scorsese and have been following his career will recognise the pattern between Mean Streets, Goodfellas, Casino and The Irishman. There is a connective tissue. There is growth there that I've spoken about elsewhere. And interestingly, regarding The Wolf of Wall Street, as I mentioned in my video on the film, it really does feel like Scorsese exhausted all of his narrative techniques with that movie, and after this began focusing on invisible directing. Anyway, it must have been a really strange experience being a Scorsese fan in the 1990s. You have this breakout film, essentially a comeback in Goodfellas, but then he does Cape Fear, then The Age of Innocence, then okay, we're back to mob cinema and Casino, but then we're following the Dalai Lama in Condemned, and then it's Bringing Out the Dead. He never quite seems to settle with one thing, to rest on his laurels. His filmography is varied, and because of this, each movie opens itself up to criticisms because each film opens itself up to different audiences along the way, who are forever wanting him to make another movie like that one that they fell in love with, whichever one of Scorsese's 20 plus movies that may be. You may perceive yourself to be a Scorsese fan, but a person who traditionally loves a movie like The Age of Innocence might not like Cape Fear, or they might not like a movie like Casino. And if you don't like Casino, that's fine. If you don't like The Age of Innocence, that's fine. It doesn't mean these are bad films. It simply means we all have different tastes. It's like there is this idea of Scorsese that we have in our heads that does not match the real life thing. We see him as the director of Goodfellas and Casino, and for a lot of us, it doesn't go past that. We don't count all those little films in between, which are just as part of Scorsese as any of his gangster films. So we have to take those as part of him and his filmography. Just look at what he's got slated to come up. Home, Sinatra, the Hawaiian gangster film with The Rock, Midnight Vendetta. These are all wildly different projects. Take a step back and look at his career since The Wolf of Wall Street. None of these movies are anything like that film. If you spend your time complaining that he isn't doing what made him great, you're going to miss the greatness that's in front of your face, the greatness that is to come.